live. But
I'd like to call to order the Pentucket Regional School Committee Business Meeting for November 17th, 2020. Roll call vote. Chris Redding. Lisa O'Connor.
Here.
Dick Hodges.
here,
Marie Falzani. Emily Dwyer.
Here.
I know Joanna will be here, or is she? And then Wayne, not sure yet.
he just wrote me, he's on his way.
Okay.
Wayne.
So the majority vote is 2.4 until
Okay.
further notice.
Okay. I would like a motion to approve the agenda, although I know we have to make an amendment to take B off of the amendment. We're not gonna, the new business, we're not gonna talk about that today.
So moved with the amendment?
Second.
Roll call vote. Emily?
Yep.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dina? Yes.
Oh, here's Wayne. Okay, Mr. Adams is here.
I would like a motion to approve the business meeting minutes from October 20th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Wayne?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Could I please have a motion to approve the Business, Finance, and Operations Subcommittee minutes from October 20th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Wayne?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yeah.
Dina? Yes.
Student rep. Fine, you said.
I thought the student rep was coming.
Supposed to be online.
She hasn't asked.
She is not.
Okay, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes from the Teaching, Learning, and Accountability Subcommittee from October 28th, 2020. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Wayne?
Yes.
Emily? Yep. Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dina? Yes. Now we're on to subcommittee updates. Any finance committee updates?
Not right now.
Okay, teaching, learning, and accountability.
Nothing beyond what was in the minutes.
Okay, great. Policy.
We're having a meeting tomorrow from 2 to 3.
Communications, Chris.
I think since we last met, our communication subcommittee met and kind of went through some issues that we wanted to through the administration about. And I had a meeting yesterday with Dr. Lee and Mary Ann and Dennis Buck and Stephen Bartholomew. Just going through some things that we'd like to change. We're going to try to do a grid format for our meetings. Duxbury uses something like it. Masco does as well. It's just one page you can go to that in a grid has our meeting agenda, has any minutes once they've been approved, has the video link, and then therefore the video, the history of the videos of the meetings. I think much easier to navigate. Dennis reached out to the website company that we use to kind of get a prototype going, which he sent to us today, and we just have to kind of make it look a little prettier. Go live. A couple other changes to the school committee page as far as communications.
And this is the PRSD page.
The PRSD school committee page.
Okay.
So right now you kind of have to search for old meetings and videos and some other and some. So this hopefully will be a better way to streamline all of that and easier for the public and even us to navigate. So
Awesome. Thank you. We have public comment, but as of today, no one signed up for public comment, so we have no public comment. So that means superintendent news, please.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair, I appreciate it. So just a few things I want to go through. One, we have a student representative that will be on the board. She was actually invited this evening. I believe she said she has an awful lot of homework tonight, so she wasn't sure when we'll get here. Casey Pedersen is the representative this year from the high school, the school committee board. So we're very happy to have her in the mix. Next thing I want to talk about, there was a lot of changes that took place, and I'll go ahead and I'll bring up that graphic that might have appeared here temporarily, but regarding the new metrics. And so this, what you're seeing now is the new metrics, and let me change that around. So are the new metrics that the government came out with, the state came out with. And you recall, if there was a shift of 5, if you had more than 5 in a week, you're probably going to be in red. Well, completely changed everything. So for populations that are under 10,000, which are our towns, you remain in gray if there's 10 or fewer cases. You're green if there's 15 or fewer cases. And then you're yellow if it's 25 to 16, and you're red if there's 25 or more cases. So right now, when we shift to where we are, all of our towns are unshaded. They've been unshaded now for 2 weeks, but that's not, we're using, that metric has shifted. But again, even though these are the new metrics, we just continue to use our consultation, which I have every week with our health agents, to determine where we are, what the impact is on the school. To this point, we have had 6 positive cases total in our district. And close contacts, it's really hard to tell how many we've had between students and employees. And there's been a lot. But these new metrics certainly change things. And I think what we've seen on the map is there were a huge number of communities that were in the red. And as soon as this metric got introduced, there were only 16. But even last week that increased. So that was the first part. First thing I wanted to share was regarding those metrics. The next thing I wanted to talk about was when this was introduced, came also with the governor and the commissioner appearing on TV. It was a Friday. And they talked about this need to have all children come into the school and having everybody doing in-person learning. All districts need to be moving there. Even if you're in the red, if you're in the red, you should be considering possibly doing hybrid. I think everyone on the school committee is aware that when we have our conversations with our health agents, they will say very, very firmly, the reason we have not had big issues and big losses in terms of students is because we are set up to be 6 feet or further apart in the classrooms. And by doing that, if there is a positive case, and now we're seeing positive cases out in the community all over the place in other towns, in other districts, we don't have to worry about it. Like in the classroom, we're not going to have that exposure if everybody's following the protocols. The only time you're going to have exposure inside the school is if someone's not following the proper protocols. So the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents identified 3 things that the state needs to address if this is ever going to come close to a reality. And to this point, they've not been successful in addressing it. But number 1 is, okay, how do you transport students? How do you transport all those students? What's that distance? Right now, we've been very fortunate with being in hybrid. A lot of parents have been driving and dropping off their students. Students have been walking to school, biking to school. And then obviously, as the cold weather comes in, that's going to be less likely. It's going to be more driving and dropping off. The second part of it is the Mass is saying, look, you need to, if this is what you're going to do, you need to get this worked out with the unions. Work it out with the MTA and the American Federation of Teachers, and so that everyone's on the same page there. And that was not successful that first time around. Instead, it was left up to 289 school districts to work independently and come up with their own agreements. And then probably the most important part, you need to get all the medical groups on the same page. If in fact 3 feet is the metric and that's a safe metric, the Department of Public Health has to be singing that song, the boards of health have to be singing that song, and that is not the message that we've been hearing. It's not the guidance that we have. So to this point, that concept of sending everybody in, and we're all aware that the high school had a positive case. If we had been at 3 feet apart, the entire high school would be closed right now. We would have to be closed for 2 days. We are in a situation at Pentucket where if there were a situation that happened outside of school, which we've run into, it's okay. We don't have to close down a school. We can keep children going to school. Until we see those actions take place, certainly a school committee has that ability to go ahead and say, well, we want everybody in person to go ahead and make it happen. We're anticipating it's possible. The state could come and say, the government say, this has to happen. So because of that, we are working with the building administrators. We already had those 82 volunteers do a feasibility study on 3 feet back in July. So we have those numbers, and now we have the principals looking at it and saying, okay, well, let's take out the students who are fully remote, and we can relook at how many kids can we actually fit in a classroom? What's the maximum we can hold? Because we know our biggest issues were space. Space and personnel were our biggest issues. But I just wanted to give you an update because I know there's been a lot of chatter out there about the governor's comments, and I've not met a single superintendent yet or had conversations, and I've been on the last 2 days, talked to at least 20 different superintendents. No one sees that as a viable option unless they were doing it already because their community has metrics that dictate that they can. So if you have low class sizes of like 10, 15, or if you're out in a place where their COVID has not really come into play, they're doing it in person. So I wanted to go over that. The next thing I wanted to mention.
Can I ask a question on
Sure.
that now?
Sure.
Okay, so when you say that if we were at 3 feet with some of the contacts, the entire high school would effectively shut down, you can explain why you can shut down the school.
Sure.
As opposed to just identifying the students who are in the classroom near that person.
Yep, sure.
It seems to me it should just be the surrounding students who are there.
Yep. So it ends up being a branch. So it's like a family tree. You start off with one person, and because they're 3 feet, it's everybody that's in theirs.
Right.
So, and then it branches out to all the people that they would have come into contact. So it's 7 periods plus the bus plus cafeteria. I mean, we're talking with really big numbers. So similar to what happened, what was that, about a month and a half ago, where we're going to want to wait for the close contact numbers to come in. So we'd end up closing down. So we would know that we didn't have more positive cases, because if there were more positive cases, there would be exponentially more close contacts.
Yeah, but that's just not right into the work. So it works that the person who's sitting and then the people who are
That's right.
apart from them should be removed from the school.
That's right.
But then the people who are 3 feet from the close contacts are not removed.
That's right. So I'm not getting into this. So I'm not talking about the close contacts of the close contacts. I'm talking about the close contacts who if they test positive, now we have a whole nother series of close contacts. So we would have to go out for a chunk of time until we have data that said those close contacts are negative. So everyone else is going to be fine, and only the person who's positive would, and the immediate close contacts would be out.
Right, so it just seems to me that you may be removing like 9 students from, probably not 9, like 4 or 5 students from a classroom, but nobody beyond that.
So it would be a total of 20, somewhere in the mid-20s at a minimum of students that would be removed.
Right.
But with that kind of number, same thing we did a month and a half ago, it's, hey, we're going to wait. That's a big number until we get test results on those students. We're going to be fully remote, because if any of them are also positive, then they have an additional number of close contacts.
Okay, it's just not how it's working in higher ed right now.
Yep. I mean, and in fact, for us, I think it's like a middle ground of, we see schools just closing down because there was a party. It's not certainly something we're not looking at doing. But yeah, and if that's something that people want to change, and obviously when things like that come up, I'm happy to have that conversation. But again, we're just following the medical advice of and by the way, the health agents are not saying to do that. But they did tell us to do that the first time. Like we had that conversation with them about, they said, here's the number. And just based on that number, I'm asking questions about what makes the most sense here. If we do this, because we at one point, we're going to shut down for 3 weeks or give it until the end, until Halloween. And we ended up just doing those, Thursday and Friday. So again, it's just going to be, they'll know the significance or the extent of it. And we just wanted to give them time to get the data of what was.
Do we have any data yet on if any people were considered close contacts or any other publications that are positive?
We do. So I don't have all of them. I know the ones we know about
Yeah.
have all been negative.
Okay. So it kind of indicates that government measures are working, right?
Yes.
Protective measures.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So I know I mentioned this. Let me see if I can get, there it is. So I'll go ahead and share again. This is, you've seen this, you have access to this if you're on the school committee, but it's the 2-week update on the numbers. So these are the dates on the top. And again, it's a 3-week look back. So you can see, if you look at these numbers, you've got Groveland in the last 3 weeks. So there's October 29th, and the asterisks are when we're doing kind of bigger numbers. But 579, and you can see the percent positive. It's been going up. West Newbury 554 has been dropping, and then Merrimack 0411 is obviously on the upswing. So regardless of shaded or unshaded, those are the numbers where they are now in the community. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was this is new and exciting. Several weeks ago, we applied to be part of phase 1 of what's called Binax Now testing. So there's just a quick presentation that I'm going to go through. But basically, Binax Now testing, I spoke with all the nurses, and Nurse Brady Lozier, she's the lead nurse. We had this conversation whether or not we thought it was a good idea. But I'll just walk through with you what some of this means for Binax Now testing. I just found out about an hour and a half ago that we were accepted into this. So this will apply to us. But really, it's a great opportunity for many situations that our employees and our students might run into, where they can have a quick test done in 15 minutes. And it gives them an indication if they're positive or negative. However, there are a couple asterisks on that one. So I'll go ahead and, so just quickly, these are the people who presented: Russell Johnson, Lauren Wu, but Dr. Madoff was the primary person that was on there. And they all work for the Department of Public Health and Human Services. So the overall idea is that you can only apply if you were having in-person classes. And they were following the guidelines. We know transmission in school remains negligible, like it's near non-existent, although it's really hard to say because of the testing. With the Binax Now, the concept is, you can see the diagrams down the bottom, but essentially what happens is if you had a teacher or a student who had symptoms, they could go down into the nurse's office. They would be able to do a nasal swab, 3 swabs in each nostril. They put it in this container. I'm not quite sure what they call it there, but they put it in there, and then they fold it up. Or they put a liquid down there, they put it in there, they fold it up. 15 minutes later, on this little square, if there's a line that appears, that means you've tested positive. So at that point, you already know. If there's no line that appears, you've tested negative on this test. And I am not a scientist, or I am not a epidemiologist, but this is, Joanne, you're gonna have to help me with this one. This is a combination of, it's not PCR, and it's not antigen based. It's like a blend of the two, but their confidence rate on this is very high. So part of this study is, even on these, if you test positive, they still want you to go and have the PCR done, but it immediately tells the parent, okay, here's the situation. And once we start unfolding this, and probably at the next school committee, one of the conversations we have to collectively have and I'll get to that page where it discusses this. Oops, wrong computer. So you can see that the cost of this is just, is minimal. It's like $150 for us to get the certain licensure piece that we need, but all the test kits are going to be available to us. It's voluntary. So the protocol, so again, if you test positive, all this gets done in the medical waiting center, and the student can go there. What we envision, preliminarily, what we envision is that we would have the student be in that testing medical center. We would contact the parent. The parent could arrive, sign the waiver for us to do the test. They'd be able to do the test there, wait the 15 minutes, and then give the results to the parent, who at that point could take the child to get tested, even if it was negative, or it gives the parent comfort of mind saying, okay, my child is negative. So if you test negative, so you can see it right there, it should be sent home. So the recommended, and there's a caveat to this. The bottom bullet there. And the reason why it's a caveat is they can't dictate on a negative test what our approach is. However, we know that there are people with chronic ailments. I'm a chronic asthmatic. So if I have symptoms of I'm struggling to breathe and I'm congested, well, those are common symptoms for me in the fall. So if they did a swab here and I came up negative, we could create a policy, and that would be an additional thing for the subcommittee to come up with, that the student or the teacher could return to the classroom.
But didn't it on the last
Yeah,
slide, you
so
just said it said if they test negative?
should. It says there, where was it? Those who test, so
Should be sent home.
should be sent home and are recommended for PCR testing for COVID. A big part of that is to help them coordinate the test results with the PCR. So when you go there, if you tested negative on PCR, tested negative on this, and you go there and the PCR test positive, they have that data. They know it's
So the negative was false.
yeah. Although, and Joanna, again, these tests they tend to be more. You're not going to have a false negative.
Well, I think they tend to have high false positive rates and lower false negative rates.
So these tests tend to err on the side of caution, as opposed to saying, hey, it's negative, you're walking around still positive.
Right.
And that's different than the rapids, because the rapids have some,
I think the rapids also tend to have high
okay,
positive rates.
but in terms of negatives,
We've had that in our district where we've had students test positive on the initial rapid test.
yeah, that's true.
Really test negative.
Negative on the PCR, yep. So overall, that's kind of the work. The CLIA is what we have to, that's what we have to pay to do. We have to fill out there's a lot of paperwork that I'm gonna have to complete. But again, it's another tool that I think will help, students who aren't feeling well or employees who aren't feeling well. It's another tool we'll have in our toolbox to be able to help support this process.
So will each school have their own supply of?
Yeah, so the idea is each school will have its own supply, and they will also, so the thought is the nurse would handle it. They go into the medical waiting room, administer the test. The student would be in there waiting while the parent came, sign off and everything. But yes, everyone would have their own supply of tests. To this, I'd say a couple weeks ago, there were 80 students and employees who had been sent home because of symptoms. So we've gone through the first 2 months and we'd sent home 80. So we're not expecting there'll be a flood. Of course, who knows now, because we're getting into both cold and flu and allergy season right now. But yeah, again, it's something we were fortunate to be brought into where I think we're excited to be a part of it and to see how well it works. But it's just something that I think is a great opportunity for us to be offered. So I'll bring you more information. Again, I just got the information. I was just going to tell you today that we applied for it. We're waiting to hear results, but I just found out today that we were accepted into phase 1 of this. So that's exciting. Okay.
That is exciting.
So up next, the next thing I wanted to talk about was athletics. just figured we'd load up the good issues here today. So we don't have any updates. I was expecting that this meeting, we would be able to talk a little bit about athletics. At this point, we are waiting for the MIAA to decide what's going to happen. The MIAA came out about a week and a half ago and said that they were going to wait for the EEA to make decisions, but they planned on starting on November 30th. The EEA came out and said pretty much what they said in the fall about here's the risk levels of sports. We know sports like wrestling were initially picked to the floating season, which is February. Basketball is a high risk, indoor track, swimming, and so wrestling got moved. So it was basketball, swimming, indoor track, and hockey. And so aside from indoor track, the other two are, I believe, on EEA considered high risk, but they didn't give any super clear guidance. So we are waiting to hear from the MIAA what their decision is going to be on athletics. I sent out a message and I got some great responses from the Mass Association of School Superintendents. Tom Scott, who was absolutely fabulous and went and did some legwork. It's a common question people are asking. And we don't know for certain because there's nothing official that's come out, but we think it's likely that the season will be delayed for a little while so they can create guidelines. My concern at the time was we were meeting tonight. Other school committees are meeting this week. And I think we'd like to be able to give informed, factual information to the school committee to say, here's the situation for us. It's not outside. Like when we were outside, we're coming out of soccer was being played where they weren't picking up the ball and throwing it in. They were kicking it. They weren't allowed to touch a ball. And you had to maintain a certain distance unless there was a challenge ball out there. Same thing for field hockey. They went from 11 to 7. And then their cross country was doing its thing. Now we're inside where you're being asked to touch a ball all the time in case of basketball and play defense. And then when you look at the other sports, indoor track, where you kind of compete. Ipswich is typically the place where we go for a lot of meets other than the Reggie Lewis. And Reggie Lewis, Conway is closed, isn't it? Yeah, so Reggie Lewis is closed, so you can't go there. So you go to Ipswich, and I can't imagine Ipswich is going to say, yeah, let's have a tri-meet and maintain all the distance and meet those requirements. So we'll wait and see what the MIA comes up with, but I would expect at our December 1st meeting, that will be a conversation that we'll talk about. Up next, I got a special guest in the waiting room. His name is Dr. Michael Jarvis. So, Dr. Jarvis, how are you doing?
Good evening. Good evening. My mic on? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you. So, what he's going to talk about just quickly is this year, it's part of the normal rotation for a focused monitoring review. And Pentucket is a tier 2 district. So, Dr. Jarvis, why don't you tell us what the heck is a focused monitor review and what does it mean to be tier 2?
Yeah. So it's a tiered focus monitoring. It's what was previously known as the coordinated program review. So it's a compliance monitoring service done by DESE. And what they do is they every 6 years, there's a full review in the way of special education and in the way of civil rights. And then every 3 years, there's an abridged version of a compliance review. And right now we are in that third year. Right. So, and what the tier 2 means that there were some findings based off of the overall compliance from the full review from the previous review. And so we're at tier 2 as opposed to tier 1 or as opposed to tier 3 or 4. So there were some findings that there was some corrective action that was required. So there are 3 parts to this, and that is for the abridged version, which is that third year of the tiered focus monitoring, is first is a self-assessment, then there's the on-site and document review, and then lastly, there's a report, and then there'd be identified corrective action that the district would implement. So right now, this whole process was interrupted, as you can imagine, by the pandemic. And we were slated for the on-site review to happen last spring. So right in the thick of things, right? And so that has been moved to January 18th, 2021.
Yeah.
So what we'll be looking at, since we've been identified as Group B, and so Group A, Group B. So Group B, focus in on licensure, professional development, facilities, oversight, time and learning, and equal access. All those points as it's related for special education. On the civil rights side of things, that will be Title VI, Title IX, Section 4, physical restraints, student learning time, and various federal, state, and state laws. So they'll be coming in to do interviews and doing a whole document review.
Yeah. So overall, Dr. Jarvis, this is just something that's standard every 3 years. This is the review. It's just ours has gotten kicked to January because of COVID.
Yep. And there's really a change. So it used to be called the coordinator review, and that is, it's now tiered focus. And it's really, the DESE has really shifted this to being a compliance thing, but not as a punitive action, but really more of as a supportive kind of degree, so that districts can then mobilize and shift an approach to meet the standards as relayed by DESE.
Okay. Mr. Hodges, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how any school system can score high or successfully on time on learning with the predicament that we have with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Everyone cannot possibly score high.
That'll be interesting to hear that kind of feedback, given the circumstances that we're in. I can just say not from the outset, there was a delay with the Department of Education in informing all school districts that the federal mandates that are in line with for special education, for example, are currently were needed to be instituted. There was a delay, from the Department of Education for Massachusetts in giving that information out to all districts. So that'll be interesting to see how they rule in on that in the way of time on learning for civil rights and on for special education.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Jarvis, thank you very much. I will, let's see, I think I'll throw you out, if that's okay.
Thanks for having me.
It was good to see you. Take care. See you tomorrow. All right. So up next, this is really, really important. I want to just give a huge shout out to the towns of Groveland, Merrimack, and West Newbury. There was, towards the end of October, I had a great conversation with Carol McLeod at Merrimack. We were in a COVID meeting for the town of Merrimack, and she was just mentioning, and we knew this CARES Act 2 money had come in. But regional school districts are not eligible for those funds. Municipalities are. So Carol and I were just talking, and so shortly after our conversation, we both got an email. She from the business manager side of things, and I got it from the superintendent side of it, where municipalities had created a document that the federal government was okay with, where they were allowed to create a grantee situation for regional school districts. So, or we could act as an organization that the town of Merrimack, in this case, would apply, and it would either get approved by CARES or get approved by FEMA. If it was FEMA, it'd be 25%. If it was CARES, it'd be 100%. So we talked to West Newbury, and they were on board. We talked to Groveland, they were on board. So we've coordinated with all 3 towns, and they submitted on our behalf expenses. So not yet incurred, to make sure they would be approved. And total, they got back to us, and all of it's been approved. We're not 100%. We have to wait for FEMA to say whether or not they accept or decline. If they decline, that's fine. That's actually preferred, because that means CARES picks up 100%, whereas FEMA would only pick up 25%. but we actually were approved for $493,351.30. All of that goes to items that impact instruction so that we can keep instruction going regardless of it's in person or remote during COVID. So just to give you some examples, we have ordered air purifiers for every single classroom. Those have already been ordered. And so every single classroom in the school district will have an air purifier, and they're not cheap ones. They're very nice ones that will put out a lot of cubic feet per minute. So we got the air purifiers. We have services to go through in 2 of our schools and for them to clean out the coils and provide servicing on the coils. We have in every single classroom a document camera that has a microphone so that teachers can use that to work with kids remotely. It's something that would show up on the screen like we have here in front of us if you're here, but so it has the microphone on. They can use it as a microphone. They can use it as a camera. That's for every single teacher. We have orders for switches and things like that in our infrastructure, so that we don't have the delays and the buffering problems that we see in some of our schools. So all of that's been included. Mr. Lebrecht, what else am I missing?
I think that's pretty much it. Mainly technology stuff, the air purifiers, the ozone machines.
Oh, some ozone. We got 25 ozone machines. So those are ozone machines. We got 25 ozone machines. Essentially, those. It's a newer. It's not really a new technology. It's existed since time out of memory, but it's a little machine that goes through, and if there was like an illness or something like that in a building, it doesn't have to be COVID. It could be anything. You could put this machine in there, and while people were out of the room, it just pulls in all the air, zaps it, and releases ozone, which is basically, it's like a lightning storm. And then the smell you have after lightning, that's what it smells like, because it just kills everything that's in there. So we had 25 of those in case there was, I don't know, sometimes, I know Ms. Dwyer, I'm sure a student has never thrown up in your class. Right. So this would be an example of that happened. Yes, you come and clean it up, but then you could just go when you're out of recess, put this ozone thing in there. It would kill it all, anything that might be there. So, it was just that kind of money. And Mr. Lebrecht is next, because I'm giving the positive news. There's adapters and things. Every classroom will have an adapter. So like we have on our setup here, so all of that's included. And it's just, I can't thank the towns enough for working with us on this, because that's such an incredibly important injection that we don't have access to it. Like we don't have access to the funds, and we don't have the funds to be able to do that. So it's just a huge shout out, and I'll say Alan Petrelli, Angus Jennings, and Carol McLeod were awesome to work with through this entire process, and the selectmen in each of the town, they all approved. So just a huge thank you to all of them. And we may not end up using, we may not be able to use all $493,000 of it, but we'll use the majority of anything we can use, we will.
Awesome.
So now I'm going to pass this to Mr. Lebrecht, who's fiscal year 21. You'll recall some time ago, he had predicted that we would have a fiscal year 21 budget around Thanksgiving. So we're close, and we're all wanting badly to know, or I'm not, but everyone else is wanting badly to know, fiscal year 21, Mr. Lebrecht, where are we?
Well, as you said, we're still waiting a little bit for the legislature, but the Senate Ways and Means and House Ways and Means have done their job. The governor's redid his budget, and the overriding theme was apparently they're going to keep Chapter 70 as a whole harmless to fiscal 20. So we're not going to get as much money as we thought we were, but then again, we never get a big increase anyway, so that's not a big deal. They're going to take a little bit of money out of transportation. Fortunately for us, for that area, we have put a little bit of money away in that revolving account we created, so we can cover that part of it. They hit us pretty hard on the increased cost to out-of-district students and charter schools. That's about a $20,000 hit to us. So that'll have to be adjusted for in the budget. So we can handle what's going to probably come out of the state when it does conference committee and all that great stuff. So that's not going to be a revenue side problem when it comes to those type of things. And obviously, the towns are going to keep making their payments.
I need to just interrupt you because you just said we can handle it, but just to be clear for the viewer audience.
So I said we can handle the revenue side.
So the revenue side, right? Okay, good, because I was going to say, there's, everything that he just said doesn't sound that, but everything he also said was just, it's a negative, it's a negative, it's a negative, like there's less than what we had budgeted for.
Now come the negatives we can't handle.
These are the negatives we cannot handle, that's what you said?
When we did the budget way back when, we had always had hoped that at some point, we'd be back to school and back to normal. And the longer this lays off, the longer and longer problems start to raise their heads. For example, although the towns have come up with some COVID money for machines and things like that, we were also given some funds to basically run the place and help buy PPE, pay for extra teachers and things. All that money runs out on December 31st. And as of right now, it's all been spent or encumbered to be spent. So come January 1st, all our money is gone, and we have commitments still, if we continue with our current model to get through the year, probably about $350,000 we're gonna have to come up with for all the temporary teachers, as well as the public health nurse, the trailer rentals, little things like that. We should be okay on the PPE side of it. But again, that's a $350,000 to $400,000 problem just in the general fund budget to keep that running. Now, remember, we also just lost $200,000 in revenue, so that's now we're well over $500,000 just there. Partly, we have a problem in food service. Partly because we hope kids will be back here eating, but as of right now, we're losing about $35,000 a month. Obviously, that cannot continue. So I'll be sitting down tomorrow, and we'll be looking at obviously staffing adjustments as well as menu adjustments. Because right now, we're only feeding 50, 60, even at the high schools, only 100 kids a day. And now we're talking they're coming every other day and not on Mondays. So obviously, we're going to lose a lot of money if we're paying people a limited use. And also, we're bringing in meal options that just aren't being used. So we'll probably be looking at very much a limited menu and very much a limited staff because we can't continue to lose $35,000 a month. That's not good. Moving on to the next part of it. We're counted on, obviously, we pay for some expenses out of preschool fees, things like that. Obviously, kindergarten wasn't going to be an issue this year, we weren't going to charge people. But preschool, obviously, a lot of parents didn't sign their kids up for preschool. So we're not taking in the revenue we thought we were going to there, so that'll be another adjustment. The district-wide before and after program, right now we're closed, and we had about $125,000 in costs associated with that program that were paid for, that, staff, custodial things that were charged to that account. No revenue is now coming in. So that's also money now that'll have to be shifted to the general fund that we're going to have to start to make up. Again, we'll be looking at that program. Obviously, some costs I have to move out, and some costs will have to just be eliminated. Whether it's just, turning off the cell phones, looking at staffing that's still in there that we're paying for, all those fun things. And now, the biggest concern I have, and if those weren't enough, we were planning on, and the superintendent wrote a letter today when I brought my concerns to him for this, for fiscal year 22, which budget I'm still actively working on, and actually the first template done this afternoon. We weren't going to charge kids for full day K. Remember, we were going to eat it this year, use our revolving account, pay for it, and then the state was going to pick it up. The problem is the state seems to be just level funding everybody and not treating it as any type of thing, not based upon any formula or anything. Whatever you got last year, you get this year. And it looks like they're leaning that way for fiscal year 22, is just not changing a bloody thing. The alternative to that is, if they don't do that, is to say, okay, let's look at your student population and readjust chapter 70. Well, that's going to be hard because every school district had a big population drop because all the kids went to homeschooling in private schools. So as I'm putting the fiscal year 22 budget together, I'm hoping we're going to get an extra $350,000 in chapter 70, and that's how the budget I'm playing with. But I have serious reservations about whether that'll actually materialize or not.
So, and to that point, the letter I'm writing is to our Congress people, just to let them know, like, the school committee made a decision to go full day kindergarten because, one, it's fair and it's appropriate, it's what's needed. And we did so knowing that we were going to have to front the cost for the first year, because the second year we would have received the funds for the students being full-time. And I just request is, I know fiscal year 22 is off, but just to put it on their radar that this will be devastating to us, because we are already incurring massive costs and trying to cover expenses that are above what we had budgeted for. And we don't want to lose this academic necessity. And no one wants to lose anything, but particularly at the kindergarten level where it's so important to have children in school all day. So, and again, there's so much that's unclear. Every school district's running it. I did have one school district just flat out said that one of the reasons they started remote was because they started looking at the numbers and they just didn't see a pathway to fiscally make it work to be able to run an in-person model and a remote model at the same, like there was no fiscal way they could see that to be viable. And as Mr. Lebrecht just said, yeah, that's where we are. I mean, we have we're paying so many extra positions already to keep cover that in the absence of, and I think the state was hoping for an additional injection of funds, in the absence of that, and those funds we got from the CARES 2, by the way, could not be used for anything like this. In the absence of a second injection of some kind, there's got to be some tough decisions that have to get made for this fiscal year. We're going to have to try to figure it out.
Yeah, most likely I'll probably be looking at a spending freeze very soon, again.
Yeah. So that's just a sneak peek for the time being. We'll leave.
All about the air purifiers, didn't you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we required to offer a hot lunch for school? I know certain districts, like, they don't have a cafeteria at all.
Yeah, no, you're required to offer a nutritious meal. It doesn't necessarily have to be a hot meal, but it has to meet the food groups, you know, the apples, and the sandwiches can be obviously salads, that type of thing. So yeah, when I say look at the menu, that's the type of thing we'd be looking at. And it may be a non-varied menu.
And again, for our
Kids may eat the same thing every day for the next 3 months.
for our viewing audience, all lunches for students this year are free. And that's the federal government came up with that. And so any student who wants to get up and get a lunch, they can go ahead and do that. The federal government's reimbursing. It's just that the difference between what we're paying for the food and the personnel.
It's like even free. I mean, 60 kids, they're not.
Right.
They're not
So
doing-
right. That's what I'm saying. We're buying the food, we're paying the people, and what we're getting in reimbursement is about $160,000 discrepancy so far, something like that, somewhere number around there, and that's in the negative. So again, it's COVID, it's a pandemic. We're taking punches and we're shifting, and we'll figure it out somehow, and we'll figure it out in a way that's least impactful to the children. But it's a challenge. It's just a challenge. So the last bit of information I have, because I know I've taken way too much of your time, is I sent a message out to the high school and middle school communities. And I also informed you, I sent it out to all employees, that on November 30th, Monday, November 30th, National Grid will be having a planned power outage. And that is so they can install a new power line on Farm Lane. It actually is a new power line that will go to the new building. Right now it's on temporary power. So middle school, high school, central services, and some homes on Farm Lane will be without power. So as a result, everybody in the middle school, high school, and central office, including students, will be fully remote.
Where is the negotiation meeting going to be?
So we can just do that virtually. I'll share that link with you.
Okay.
It's a good question. Good, you're right on that Monday.
30th.
Okay, so anybody have any questions about that? All right, Madam Chair, that is all I have.
Thank you very much, Dr. B. There's some really good stuff and some really not good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so on to new business. Our first order of business, new business is elementary parent and teacher conference. I believe we're changing the schedules.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So initially, we had looked at, it was December 1st and December 3rd, were where the parent-teacher conferences were going to be for elementary. However, once we shifted into our cohorts, that would be cohort A. That would be shortened by a full day. So we are looking for approval from the school committee, instead of the 1st and the 3rd, to move it to parent-teacher conferences December 1st and December 2nd. That way, cohort A has a half day, cohort B has a half day.
Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding that? Or discussion? So could I have a motion to approve changing the schedule of the parent-teacher conferences to, what were the dates? The 2nd and the 3rd?
December 1st, from December 1st and December 3rd to December 1st and December 2nd.
Is that just for elementary?
Just elementary. The high school and middle school remain next week.
All right, I move that change.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Wayne?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie? Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dina, yes. So our next item of new business is a change in the remote learning plan.
That's me again. And Mr. Conway, I'm sure will chime in. So just, I want to go back originally, and I'm sorry if I confused everybody in my description. I didn't mean to. But when we did the original plan, elementary school, if you look at the original plan, had a total of about 2.5 hours where they had synchronous and interaction in the classroom. And then even in secondary, the schedule was going for a few hours in the morning, then it was like 60 minutes of group meetings and another 60 minutes of group meetings. That to us is a massive disruption. Like so from what we've been doing. And we've already seen that in the secondary, because they've had to for now 3 days, and next Monday will be, Monday the 3rd will be the 4th day, where there already is a schedule set up where the students just continue to follow their regular schedule. So as an example, I think right now it's the secondary has 7 40-minute periods, about 40 minutes. I put together, this is just an example, a model example, where that was Monday. So on Mondays, this is just an example of a Monday, so on Mondays right now, it's 45 minutes office hours. So for secondary, just an example. I'm not proposing this. What I'm really looking for is your permission to be able to go ahead and make changes to this and just share it with Mr. Conway, meet with elementary and middle school, high school problem-solving teams, but just that we do on Monday 2 hours of synchronous learning where they would meet with all their kids secondary for just a short amount of time, about 15 minutes. And then Tuesday through Friday, they'd have about 40 minutes, but essentially it ends up being a full school day for the kids, where they go to all of their classes. Everybody would have lunch at the same time. There'd be this break. There'd be breaks in between because we do not want children staring at screens all day long. So they will be asked to do some independent work and maybe check back in. So that's secondary. And again, this is just an example. I'm not asking you to approve this. And on elementary, I'm not asking for 2.5 hours. We're asking for a regular school day that children just continue. If you went through, and I have this just as an example, I have this visual, but if you went through and 8:30 to 8:50 was your morning meeting, this is if you were in person, 8:50 to 10:20 was literacy, 10:20 to 11:10 was your special, 11:10 to 12 was lunch and recess, 12 to 1:30 was math, and then 1:30 to 2:45 was science, social studies, or activities, or whatever. If that's what you're doing in person, we want to be able to keep on doing that same thing if we were to go fully remote. And the way that looks different is basically if you have, if there was one block and a 1 hour block of instruction, it'd be 20 minutes of direct instruction, 20 minutes of small group instruction, and 15 minutes of independent practice followed by a 5-minute wrap up. And again, these are just conceptual ideas that seem to make sense based on what we're doing. If it was a 90-minute block, like literacy blocks, student might have at home, if they were at home, they might have 25 minutes of direct instruction, small group for a half an hour, 25 minutes of independent practice. So they might be out reading or might have individual conferencing, and then a 10-minute wrap up. So what I'm asking for is for your, since you approved the original plan, I'm asking for your approval for us to go back and revisit this because it made sense in July based on the model we had. We were going from fully remote, fully remote to a quarter in, to hybrid, to full in. And now that we've gone through and we've seen what's possible, we feel like we need to make big changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but by and large, we did it in the summer thinking it was an option if we returned in full remote. But now that we've been back, kids are used to a schedule and used to a routine. We want to replicate that as much as we can. We don't want kids sitting in front of a computer for 6 straight hours. We want to build in some breaks. We want to build that in, especially for elementary students, for sure.
So you're looking for an amendment to the original plan?
We want to update the original plan for remote learning
And then bring it back to you.
and bring back the actual final changes that
For
we're
us to
proposing.
approve.
Yes.
Now, have you been working with teachers on this,
So
or the elementary school teachers?
if you give approval today, tomorrow, we'll send out a message to the elementary and the secondary teachers. And Mr. Comp, we have the elementary problem-solving team and the middle and high school problem-solving team, just to send it out and say, hey, here's some work we would like to do quickly. Can we take a look at this? Again, secondary, they've already gone through this. They've done this already several times. So I don't expect it'll be shocking to them. For elementary, we just need to hash out a lot of things because we don't want to increase anxiety. We want to keep the flow as smooth as possible. And we don't want them thinking they're going to have to be staring at a screen all day long.
And this is if we have to go full remote.
Well, it also leads into my next item on the agenda. So, yes, so this is if we have to go fully remote for the plan purposes.
Be that for 2 weeks, if it's one school for 2
Right.
weeks,
Right.
if it's the whole district for 2 weeks, or 2 months, however long it may be.
Okay.
This is, so, and I'll mention, we know this has already happened in the secondary. It also happened at the elementary, right? We had a whole entire grade level that was fully remote. And it was at the youngest possible age. So that couldn't be easy, but it's been done already. But because the original plan, you approved it, I don't want to go ahead and make changes to that without you without getting your blessing that it's okay for us to go ahead and make changes, and then we'll bring back to you our proposal.
So can I have a motion, I guess, to approve them going in and altering the remote plan and bringing it back to us?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call, Wayne Adams,
Yes.
Joanna Blanchard, Emily,
Yes.
Marie, Dick,
Yes.
Lisa, Chris.
Yes.
Dana, yes. Okay.
Okay, so this leads into my next part, which is connected regarding snow days. So we're seeking an approval for if there is a snow day, that we are able to just do remote learning on that snow day and for it to count as a school day. The exception to that, if there's a power outage or there's something that widespread power outage, that at that point, it'd be an off day.
So similar to what we've done in the past, although this would follow the similar plan that we would devise for a full remote day where students are engaged all day. The Department of Ed has requested that districts receive permission of a positive vote from their school committees in order to take this step.
So would this do away with the extra 5 days at the end of the year? type
Yeah,
thing?
it would just count as a regular, it would count as a regular school day. We wouldn't have, yes,
And then we would end school 5 days earlier.
that is correct.
And again, I think to Dr. Bartholomew's earlier point, the only exception is if there was a sort of a widespread internet or power outage, then we can't really do that. Or we can't exclude an entire section of one of the towns, for instance, from it. We would have to call it a snow day for that matter and then make it up.
Emily has a question.
Emily?
So my question around this is, well, going back to when we did this, well, in previous years, I guess, and our agreement was that we would only do this when it was called ahead of time. And I totally understand your reasoning on what you're coming at here, but I also think that if there's a storm that hits in the night, I don't think it's reasonable to say to the teachers, oh, P.S., now you're teaching from home, because the teachers are already bringing back and forth a lot of stuff. And as much as it sounds like, oh, teach it from home as opposed to teach it from school, like that's your document camera and all of your teacher's manuals and your manipulatives and all the things that you would use. So I want to make sure that we're making this not a burden, like, oh, we decided this at 4 this morning, and if you didn't bring your stuff home last night because there was no snow, you know, it wasn't forecast to be that bad, it's like you're out of luck.
Yep. So I think it's a great point, and I would say that what we certainly have not perfected distance learning, but we're definitely better than we were a year ago when that big snow hit the start of December. It's like first December last year. But yes, to your point, I think if we saw that there was a storm on the horizon, we would just say, we would give everybody things, look, be prepared. This looks like this might be a multiple day event. So just give you a heads up. And to be honest with you, you know, we always make those decisions where I'm up and outside at 2, 3 in the morning, checking to see what the roads are like, talking to Greg Haddon or Bob Danforth, and talking to our Department of Public Works, finding out the conditions. You know, we don't have to play around with that anymore for the sake of safety. Instead, if we were to get 6 inches of snow, it's great to have a delayed opening, but teachers going out and trying to clear their driveway and then get to work, that's just lost time when they could be in the group virtually with kids. So I think we would just ask them to give them advance notice.
Yeah, that's my only point. I mean, the multi-day event thing that we've been concerned about in the past, I don't think is an issue, because now we have the routines as well as the technology in place. But I just am loath to put any more burden on anybody. And I know and just because you had mentioned the document cameras earlier, like that is something that at this point I would struggle to teach without. And to the point where like I got one to have at home so that I don't have to bring it back and forth. And I think that we just need to be cognizant of what further demands we're putting on the teachers, because it's not identical, even though it's similar, teaching from home and teaching remotely from your classroom.
Does anyone else have any? So how should we go? I'm not really sure how we should vote on this.
So I think we're seeking approval from the committee to use remote learning days in the place of weather cancellation days.
Okay, with advance notice, though, perhaps?
Yes,
Okay.
with advance notice and the understanding that if it's a widespread power outage or something like that, that we would not, like that would not count. We would not ask people to do work.
I'll move that change.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Does anyone else have any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
So I would say I'm actually not in favor of it. And the reason I'm not in favor of it is I'm picturing, first of all, parents who are trying to actually get out of the house and get themselves to work on a snow day. And now they're trying to, not people with older kids, but people with younger kids, trying to like, you know, negotiate, logging their kids in, helping them get into a lesson for 20 minutes, and then they get 20 minutes off, so they can go shovel the driveway, and then they're back inside. Because basically, you're gonna have like 20 minutes in the classroom, and then maybe 40 minutes when they're kind of out of the classroom, I'm guessing, and then they're back in.
Yeah, they're probably more independent work, so it's not like their breaks will be shorter. I think we'll work it out too. I mean, and for the younger K-2, it might look different than it does grades 3 to 6.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be in favor of something where it was more like
The blizzard bag, yeah,
type of
I was thinking
situation
that.
where the kids have to work. You know, this is the work that needs to get done, as opposed to kids having to be on the screen like every hour for 20 minutes. And especially, like right now, I think the kids, what they mostly need is some mental health. It snows, it's great to be able to finally get out and do something in your yard that's safe and you can just be outside. As opposed to, so like, if I had a kindergartner or a first grader, you know, it takes me 20 minutes to get their snow gear on. And then they finally get out and start playing, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta get them back inside to get back on the computer. So I'm really not in favor right now, at least for the first 3 or 4 snow days, of kids having to come inside every hour to participate in it. I think you're actually gonna have a lot of kids who are really upset about having to learn in that model, because they really just probably want to go out and have fun.
So I think the only downside to what you're saying is I don't think that will pass muster with the Department of Education based
Exactly.
on time on.
Right.
So the approach we had previously won't count as a day of school.
So that said, there is the possibility that we could go through and set it up so that there's a large amount of time that's done initially at the beginning, and then the rest of independent in the afternoon, like in the second part of the day or something like that.
And maybe that's how it's set up for the younger grades, potentially, versus the older grades where students are expected to get on and go through their day.
Emily?
Well, I also think one possible solution, because I don't disagree that the kids are going to want to be outside, is using them more similar to the model that they're using on Mondays. And so where we have platforms, whether it's Google Classroom or Seesaw, where the kids can work at their own pace. So there is some direct instruction, albeit recorded. So maybe we would, expect, and this would be obviously your call as to how much, but that they would log in for a morning meeting, and that the teachers might be available at certain chunks, or, more like office hours, but more frequent, so that the families could check in for the kids who needed that, but, or kids who needed more structure to their day, for parents who might be working remotely, but that kids who were familiar with this structure already could go into Seesaw and they could click through their, their literacy, and then go out and do whatever they want for a couple hours and come back and do math after lunch or whatever it is. Because I think that those routines are already in place. And for primary kids, I think that although there is a fun element, obviously, and we do want the kids outside and moving, there is value to a certain, not like rigid structure, but to a touchstone, if you will, especially if it's a multi-day event where they might have morning meeting, and then they might, part of their day could be built in, first graders are learning about vibrations right now. What can you find that's vibrating outside in the snow? So the teachers are experts at dragging in their curriculum to reality. I just think we would need to be clear with them that was okay.
Yeah, and I think to both of your points, Mary, as a teacher, and on those days, I heard, I think Joanna, you talked about the stress and anxiety and want to be outside. The adults aren't very different from that either. So I think if there were something that gave them an opportunity to just decompress a little bit and still be able to get work done, I think that would be a big upside as well.
Wayne?
I think Emily's point is well taken. Make sure that both students and staff have ample notification. I don't have any problem with substituting snow day at all. My experience past, when there wasn't COVID, administration would let staff know beforehand or during the school day that a snowstorm can be expected, so make sure you take your materials home. I would pass that on to my class. I'd let them know that their assignments will still due, etc. I don't recall any major problem. But Emily's point about notification is, yeah, I think everybody will handle it fine. And as far as specifics, what's going to be done and not going to be done, what's the best format is, I'm not sure we're telling our administration what to do and how to handle that. I think our job right now is to say, are we okay with having a snow day be a remote day? Not telling them what we think should be done during that time. That's all.
Okay. Chris?
So kind of, I'm not going to agree with what Wayne just said, because I think that there is a responsibility for the school committee when we're voting this to define the expectations. And I think the expectations need to be that it's not going to be, okay, here's your little assignments you do. I mean, I think there has to be a certain level of interaction between the teachers and the students at home. I don't think it has to be all day, but I think there has to be an expectation that there will be interaction, synchronous learning, because otherwise I don't think, like Brent said, Department of Ed, they wanted to get rid of this altogether this year. So I'm thinking they can't say that because of where we are. But I'm also thinking they can really push back to those districts. And if we think, okay, we did the snow day, and if they ask for any information, like we have to have a bar that we have to meet. You know, and one of the other things is part of our stipulations on our old snow policy was not to have it 2 days in a row, or there were things that we had to do.
Right, the blizzard,
like
yeah.
I don't want to have a week out of school and every day is a snow day, you know, like, so we have to look at that too. If there is huge, you know, snow event that comes along. But I believe that the administration, once we set that bar of expectations, then it's up to administration and teachers to kind of figure out how do we meet that that's beneficial to the students.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. And I also agree with Emily. I think that we should, and maybe structure it like our Mondays somewhat, and because Mondays are counted as days on time on learning,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So if we could maybe structure it that way and maybe front load it so that the kids can, you know, eventually make it outside and enjoy the snow. And Joanna?
I'm just wondering, should we table this discussion in order to allow Brent and Justin to actually come up with a plan that we vote on? Because right now we don't really have a plan we're voting on.
Yep, I would,
We meet again on December 1st, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have a multi-layer plan, because what we do for a first grader is not what a ninth grader should be doing. A ninth grader does not need to go out and make snowmen for 2.5 hours.
well,
They may like to,
Right.
yes.
Engineering.
Yeah, can I just-
Because I do think, to your point, it should be a lot like the Mondays. I understand that. The concern about that, though, is
If
we're
it's
trying to continue
multiple days.
our continuity of curriculum. And if we're all of a sudden, especially for our older students, if we're going to change the entire format, and they're really not, because now what you're asking teachers to do is the day before, what they had planned on a Thursday, they now on Wednesday have to figure out an entirely different way for the kids to engage with it, rather than simply
right.
just doing what they had planned, just doing it via a remote schedule with a decreased time schedule in front of a screen. But it's more accommodation, modifying it, rather than completely changing it. So I worry about having an entirely different schedule than what we would normally expect on a given day.
So I just point out a couple things I think we may have lost in this. One, secondary already does this, right? We've already done this. And this is called snow days, but it's just snow days. It could be weather days, emergency, whatever.
Shut the electricity off day.
Shut the electricity off, burst the water main, whichever those may be. Well, this has already been done. right? And I think the one element, because it says snow days, the one element in there that's twisted a little bit is snow. But secondary has already happened, and it's similar to what we just talked about in the other plans. We have an idea already of what secondary will be like for the fully remote if we go that direction. In elementary, we just have to work out. We just have to work it out, and we're not sure. And I even think after the first time we try this, I think Chris, you said this, and it's a great point. If we're out of school for 4 days, we don't want to be sitting there saying, "Hey, we only blizzard bagged it in elementary for enough for 1 day." Like, then we're in trouble. Like, we have the ability and capability. So where we say to teachers, "Listen, this is big storm coming. Take what you need just in case for X number of days." Then they can do that. We can wait until December 1st. I would just say that if something happened, and we had on December 1st, when we meet on that day, my thought would be that
Here, December 2nd, big snowstorm, we miss school.
Be that as it may.
Sorry. I'm losing my voice.
Yeah, you are losing your voice.
Yeah.
Okay, Emily?
Would it be a compromise to vote the concept of this pending the details that you'll provide at the next meeting? Because clearly you have some more details for secondary than are maybe feasible for elementary.
I think we have details for elementary. What we want to be able to do is bring it to that problem-solving group with the teachers and gather their feedback. I think we recognize that what we have to do at K-1, K-2 might be different than 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, and I think honestly, it would probably more closely replicate what we talked about doing if we had to go remote, that those days would simply look very similar. It would be important. And I think that's to be fair to the teachers, that there's continuity and there's not, plan X on odd numbered Tuesdays that you have to do it. And just the same thing that they could plan around, I think would be better for them. But we want their feedback on it too, and which we're going to do in the coming days.
Lisa, you have a question?
Yeah, so I know we want full inclusion of all our students. So what happens to the high need students that are currently in the building 5 days a week? They never have that Monday remote model. So what would a snow day look like for them?
Yeah, their teacher who would be working with them would simply be working remotely with them on that day. It would replicate their regular school day.
But the kids have never been exposed to that if they're in school 5 days a week.
Yeah, they all have access to that. So we've used that before with them. They do have access to a lot of that. So, and that's part of the prep work too, is making sure that the teachers understand what that is and can communicate it out to the parents too.
So that needs to be done far before it actually taking place.
That's correct, which is why we want to get moving on it.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table to approve the snow days, but
Is there a motion?
wasn't there?
Or there is a motion? Can you read it, Mary?
Yeah. There's a motion to seek approval for remote days if we have a snowstorm. This does not include a power outage. If a lot of the district is out, it counts as and it would be done with advance notice. But did you want to table this?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table it personally.
Second.
Okay.
Just what, if it's tabled though,
No more
it's still going to be researched? End of discussion, right? Again, ask a question.
Correct.
Is it true that this is already in place for the middle school and the high school, and our
No,
search for
Dick,
this?
there's no more discussion on it. It's been tabled.
We have
Oh, we have to vote on it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I can speak until it's voted. I'll be quiet when it's voted on.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because right after the second, we have discussion, so I'm part of the discussion right now.
Okay.
So my question, it's not really a discussion, it's a question. It sounds like this particular plan, whether it's snow, electric, water main problems, is already in place. And I'm wondering if our focus ought to be in asking our administrators to come to us with their ideas about how we're going to sell this to the elementaries and how that's going to be an effective. Is that a reasonable?
I don't know if it's, I wouldn't say it's in place. I think we have a model that people would use that we feel that would be comparable to use. And I don't think we have to sell anything to the elementary teachers. I think we just need dialogue with them to get their feedback on the challenges they may see. I think they have to understand, though, that the blizzard bag approach we previously used is not a viable option. Can't do that. And the other option is we don't do this and we make the days up in June. That's the other option. I think we come to you today because we don't think that's the best option. We think this is a good option because we have the technology, we have the routine, and we do have the understanding of how the kids are to do this. And we should take advantage of that.
Okay. Thanks, Brett. So our vote right now is to table? Okay. Is there any more discussion?
Well,
Okay.
am I allowed to ask a question or I'm not? It's still,
We haven't voted yet, so you can ask a question.
well, I thought I was shut down from asking a question.
So point of order.
Okay.
You're not, so I think you can ask a clarifying question on the motion of tabling, but once somebody makes the motion of tabling, there's not supposed to be any discussion on,
Okay.
on the point. Yeah.
I got to reread that one.
So do you just have a question, Lisa, or a discussion point?
So I need clarity. And if I'm not getting clarity, then I'm going to abstain from voting. Are we voting to table this with the understanding that the administration is going to go to the principals and figure out a tight plan and bring it back to us? Are we tabling it and that's the end of discussion period and it won't come back to us again?
No, we are tabling it for it to come back with a plan.
Coming back with a tighter plan.
Correct.
Okay, so it's still going to be worked on even though we tabled it.
Correct.
I can support that.
Do you have any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay. So roll call vote. Wayne,
No,
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily,
Yeah.
Marie, Dick,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yep.
Chris,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
What did Lisa say? Excuse me.
Lisa said yes.
Okay. Okay.
So we are tabling this for more detail next meeting.
Great.
On to our next new business. E, new student forms to online format proposal. Is this you, Brent?
So this is just a information and discussion, no need for a vote. I think given the current circumstances, as we begin to prepare for kindergarten registration, preschool registration, we're actually going to hold off on kindergarten registration probably till after the new year. But preschool registration will begin fairly soon. Nonetheless, we want to move all of our registration forms to an online format. We created fillable PDFs of almost all of our forms that we'll put up on the website, and that gives parents that option. We haven't done that before. It doesn't change the registration process. It just does change the format in which they do it, and they'll be emailing those forms in. We will probably still have to collect an actual, some of the documentation we will have to connect, but we're trying to limit the amount of interaction or potential exposure with anybody, for community members and for our own staff, both back and forth. So we just wanted to inform the committee that we plan to make that change. They're all the same forms, it's the same information, and we'll do that when we can. I think down the road, what we'd really like to do is take advantage of Infinite Campus's sort of add-on feature, which is an actual digital registration process, and it puts everything right into the system. That's an additional expense, and we won't talk about that.
We will not.
Say what?
That's right.
So I think it's a good idea, and I mean, we should have probably been doing it for a while now. Does anyone have any questions about it for Brent? Marie?
Yeah, I'm just concerned because I find our website difficult to use at times when I'm in district. So how are preschool parents who may be watching at home gonna know where to go to where to find?
So it's preschool, and it'll be kindergarten, and anyone moving into district.
Yeah.
Because if you look on our website now, none of those forms exist on the website. Those forms can only be gathered by calling the school and picking up a packet, a paper packet, and then they write it.
Right.
So they'll be prominently featured, and when we do these, we put out advertisements. Mary Ann sends one out, and maybe it's something that even via school committee communication we can put out too, especially in kindergarten, and with a link directly to where they are on the website. So, but they'll be prominently featured, and our plan is to get them up this week.
Great. Any other questions? All right, now, the next item on the agenda is bylaws subcommittee. The bylaws for the school committee, I don't think have been updated in, Chris, how long? Very long time, right?
13 years.
Yeah,
Before my time.
15 years. So I would like to put a subcommittee together to kind of go over them and see what needs to be updating, deleted, added. Do I have any, do I have any volunteers for that? I will be one of them to do it, and I don't know.
Can you give an idea of like how many hours you think is involved in this? What this?
I have no idea. Like, I really don't.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot.
Like 5 pages, right?
Oh, it's only 5 pages? Okay.
But I think some of it is just like older, outdated language.
Adam and Eve signed off on our bylaws.
Yeah, but is it like what Marie's having to do, which can go
No,
to
no,
multiple
no.
districts, look at all their bylaws?
Not even close.
No,
So what are
it's
we
about
just?
meeting times, how many members are on the school committee, rotating officers. It's very simple.
But some of it is outdated.
Right.
Right.
We'd have to just,
So are you thinking it's gonna be like a meeting or two?
probably like 2 meetings.
I mean, I guess I can do it.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
That's enthusiastic. I guess I did.
But it's probably something that I would think you could, each person on the committee could look at it and come with their ideas.
Right.
You'd be good at it.
Not a lot.
Me and you?
Okay.
Anyone else?
Well, you got a Merrimack, you got a West Newbury, now we need a Groveland. Just be quiet.
That's fine, I'm sure.
Yeah, Joanna and I can handle it.
Then I don't have to do the superintendent's evaluation. That's
Get out of it.
And that is next.
At least
For the superintendent's evaluation subcommittee, we need to make a committee. And I'll need some volunteers for that as well.
So I'll volunteer to do it as a continuation from last year and the work we did, and then our goals kind of, we worked together, so I will.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Do I have anyone else, Wayne?
Wayne, are you interested in doing that?
I don't think so. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Marie? Okay. And do you want me, I mean, we did it last time, I think. All right, so
These are the three of us on.
I love it. All right, so,
Are you on that as well?
yeah, superintendent subcommittee, Chris, Marie, and Dina. Thank you for volunteering. And now we want to discuss the time of school committee meetings because it has, in the bylaws, it's, I think, 7:30. We've had to change it many times this year for different reasons, for length of time, for just, I mean, the pandemic is all I have is an excuse really, but so do we want to discuss changing, I know, Joanna, you have a hard time getting here at 6, which is fine. I mean, if you come in a little late, it's not that big of a deal. So can I get, does anyone have any discussion about what time? Is everyone okay with the 6 o'clock? Do you want to move it to 6:30? Anyone want to move it earlier? I mean, does anyone have an opinion?
Joanna.
So
Joanna?
I'm okay with it starting at 6, just to be aware that it is hard for me to make it till 6. The thing that I'm having a problem with though is that, originally we were 6:30 and then we moved it to 6:15 with the idea that we would get out a little bit earlier, and now we moved it back to 6. But what's actually happened is we just kind of extended the meeting times. We're kind of getting out at the same time we used to, and this was pre-COVID, so I can't just say it's pandemic related. So I feel like we need to, if we're gonna have a 6 o'clock meeting start, I don't want to be sitting here for 3-hour meetings. Like, I don't focus for 3 hours, 2 hours I'm kind of maxed out. So I feel like we need to make an effort to contain the meeting times, to 2 hours. So other meetings that I attend at work, the meetings are set from, 4 to 5. And then if you get to 5 o'clock, you actually need a motion to extend.
Okay.
And everybody has to approve that. So I'm just suggesting it is like, if we get into the bylaws, we're gonna be on this committee. So that's something that, for starting earlier, I don't want to be starting earlier thinking that we can just go
Until whenever.
just because now we're starting earlier.
Okay.
So it's just something I'm putting out there for people to consider, but what normally gets done is, the meetings get front loaded with the things that are of most importance that have to be addressed, and the end of the agenda is things that, would be nice to get to, but if we don't get to it, then they can be put off. And I understand sometimes agendas are filled with things that are urgent, so then the motion to extend is approved, but at work, when things aren't that urgent, then the motion to extend is not approved. So that's just my opinion on an early start time.
Okay. Emily and then Chris?
I think that sounds like a great idea. I am definitely for continuing to start as early as possible, just because I am not a late night person. I have to get up too early. But I love that idea, Joanna, because I agree with what you said.
Yeah, I actually think that that's a great idea too. Chris?
Well, so I think part of it too, I mean, when we went from 7 to 6:30, we took a vote as a committee. When we went from 6:30 to 6:15, we took a vote as a committee. And then the pandemic happened and we were taking all different times. And so my initial frustration is that, this change was made without kind of everybody buying in on it. And I'm lucky that this year I have the flexibility. There were years before where I could not be here at 6 o'clock because of running kids around and husbands traveling and stuff like that. But beyond that, I think we also have to look at what we have on, the agendas. And if it looks like it's too much, then maybe we need to break it into 2 meetings, because I think, there's an awful lot of important stuff. I don't know what I would have taken off of tonight's, maybe the online forms, would have been just an email. Like, I'm not blaming Brent for bringing it up because
Good job, Brent.
But I'm just saying, like, or we look at our policies, and I know that the policy committees try to get through a lot, but that does take time to go through most of them. So, maybe we need to look at that. When it was announced that we weren't having the first meeting in November because of the election, I automatically thought we were going to have it last week so that we would still have 2 per month. So to only have 1 per month, it got loaded, even though I think Mary Ann would have said 2 weeks ago, there isn't anything there isn't much of anything.
Well, sometimes it is, and then things come up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I think we have to be more cognizant of that as well.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Marie has her hand up.
Marie, I can't see you very well.
I agree. It would be nice to vote on a set time. I know, I completely agree when we've gotten emails like it's probably going to be a 3 or 4 hour meeting. Can anyone meet at 5? I'm totally on board with that. But week to week, it moving around. For a little while, they just got confusing. But also, I would like to know how that it's going to affect the agenda, because what Joanne is proposing, while I understand the appeal to it, I mean, if policy is going to be bumped week after week after week, then we're not going to work on it, because we spend a lot of time working on it, and I'm not going to put that those hours in week to week to have it bumped every week. You know what I mean? So like, unless the agenda is going to be motion to be moved around so that not the same things are being bumped off, then I wouldn't be in favor of that. Not just because it's policy and the work we do on that, but for anything that, I mean, would we take a vote at the beginning of the meeting saying, okay, did everyone look at the agenda? What items are you willing to bump tonight? What are you not going to be willing to bump? Because that would affect my decision.
Joanna?
So what I would say to that is, like, we as a committee have to agree that we actually prioritize policies. The policies would actually be probably item 1 on the agenda versus right now I think it's actually a bad place that we put these last items, but I'll tell you, like, I'm sitting there thinking, I want to get out of this meeting. I really am not going to spend, like, I had some things I would have brought up, but I'm ready to go. So I'm not bringing them up. So, you know, like, and I think that's just because it gets to be 8:30, 9 o'clock and I'm done. So I think that, like, policies, like, and this is, of course, purview of the chair is to decide how our agenda is going to be organized. So the chair would have to decide what's of utmost importance for that week and where things would go. Sorry, Dana.
Okay.
But,
No, yeah, no.
no, sorry to lay that on you.
No, and I agree. I can absolutely do that. Emily, did you have a question?
I was just going to say the other thing, I agree with Joanna that rearranging it could be part of it, but also if there are things that are important but not urgent, that could be, to Chris's point, you know, we're going to add in an extra meeting. We're going to spend an hour just focusing on blah, 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 you know, policy or bylaws or whatever it is that nobody wants to be starting and really trying to do their best at 8:30. But that's a way we could use that, is to not to put in another giant meeting, but to put in something else that's focused.
Okay. These are all great ideas. And we can discuss them in our bylaws.
Yeah. One more question behind you or comment.
Chris.
So when I was on the press board of directors, we came up with an idea to have a consent agenda. So those are things like minutes. Trying to think if there's other things that we should see, but we don't need to take time talking about. We vote it as a complete block without individual. I mean, it doesn't save that much time, but sometimes that could save time depending upon how many minutes we have, and you know, there may be other things that could be included in that. That could be something we could look up, streamline it a little bit more. And then, so I was actually sitting in on the high school council meeting yesterday, and a lot of great discussions. And one of the things that I came back with is, like, it really enlightened me to stuff that I wasn't even aware of going on in the high school. I'd really love to see those come back, where, you know, we're learning and talking about what's going on in the different schools, and, you know, okay, it's COVID, but this school is doing, you know, the middle school's doing the food drive, and how are we doing the sharing? Who are we getting, you know, like things
How
like
did we
that.
used to do? How was that done?
They used to come to our, I mean, last year they did it.
Right.
Like, they would just come at the beginning. It was like a rotating basis, and, you know, I feel like everything's so remote right now, but we still need to know what's going on. We still, like, as a school committee, have to understand the dynamics. You know, they can report to us, but hearing it firsthand from the administrators, or, you know, if students come on for a little bit.
Okay.
So took away time, but then add back.
So should we discuss, I mean, this is a discuss approve time of school committee meeting. Can we have a motion? Oh, Dick, you had a question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just wanted to say I'm in a unique position where my schedule is much more flexible than probably anybody in the room. So time is not a factor for me. But I want to piggyback off what you were talking about, because we are approximately a decade behind most schools, or at least we were years ago. And our capacity to catch up, I think, is incredibly important. And I would encourage you to think seriously about moving the policy instead of putting it in last place, just moving it up. Because we need to keep nipping away at that, and we're working our fannies off,
No, I know you.
hours after hours after hours, and it's tedious work, but it's important work. So
Absolutely.
I just want to put a plus on that. So whatever the committee decides on time, I'll be here.
Thank you.
I
Chris?
even think policies could be put on the consent agenda. And if there was an individual one that like I had a question on, we would pull that out. But then the other four that nobody has any questions on just gets voted as, everything on the consent agenda we approve.
Okay.
So that could be a way to streamline things, but we'd have to just be cognizant of, this one and this one we need to pull out and discuss. Or if there was ones that the policy committee is like, we're just rubber stamping it because we didn't make changes. Or yeah, there's these tangible things we need to talk about.
Now, as the consent agenda, we would add it to our bylaws, pretty much, right?
Excuse me, I might be able to help. Years ago, we had a consent agenda.
Okay.
So when we meet with Wayne,
For our
I
agenda
might be
meeting?
able to get Justin, I might be able to do with that.
Okay. Okay, great. Do you have a question? Oh. Okay. So again, back to, should we pick a time? Is everyone okay with the 6 o'clock start time?
We need a motion?
Yes, I need a motion to approve the school committee meetings time of 6 o'clock.
Second.
Any more discussion? Emily? Oh, no. Okay. Wayne?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dina? Yes. So we'll do 6 o'clock and then we will work on the consent agenda and our bylaw. And now we are on to policies. Okay. Can I have a motion to accept policy BG, school committee policy development?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Wayne?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dina? Yes. Policy BG approved. Policy, do I have a motion for policy BGB, school committee policy adoption?
Move BGB school committee policy adoption.
Is there any discussion?
I have a question on this one.
Sorry, I can't see you in
I
my
know,
clear
so I'm
view.
making you not turn your neck, but just letting you know if I have a question. So the second sentence says policies will be adopted and or amended only by the affirmative vote of a majority of the members. So is that what is meant, like a majority of the members be 5 out of 4? Versus down in number 3, it says by majority vote. Because like when we approve policies, it's by weighted vote, correct? So I think the wording there.
The third one is for third reading, right?
The first statement where it says policies will be adopted and or amended only by,
Sorry, yes.
yeah, by the affirmative vote of a majority of the members. Isn't that not correct? Shouldn't it be by majority vote?
I almost think that sentence should say, policies will be adopted and or amended as outlined
By
in 1
majority?
through 3 below.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
But then you have to put this second half of the line because it has to be on the agenda.
And then on number 2, for the second reading, is the second reading unanimous vote?
No, it's not unanimous, it goes back to third.
Say that again? If
If
it's
it's
not,
not unanimous, it goes back for third.
right, so on.
So it has
second
to be
reading, It
unanimous.
doesn't say anything about what type of vote we need. So on the first reading, it said on the first reading, it has to be unanimous, but then it just says second reading, it just says discussion, adoption, or rejection, but it doesn't say it has to be a unanimous vote for acceptance. So I think the second reading, number 2, also has to say adoption by unanimous vote. And then if it's not unanimous, then it goes to the third reading where it's just a majority vote.
So essentially, the last sentence in number 1, duplicate that to number 2 and change the wording on it to third reading.
Second reading.
Right, the second reading, and then at the end of it, not require a third reading.
Okay.
Now, do we want to approve this with those amendments? Is everyone all right with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we already have the motion, or do we need a second motion?
No, we haven't.
Okay. With the amendments? Okay. Roll call vote, Wayne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marie, Dick,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dina, yes. May I please have a motion to approve policy BCB committee member conflict of interest?
Move BCB committee member conflict of interest.
Second?
Second, is there any discussion? Chris?
So I have 2 things. One is, when we talk about the exemption for sports teams, the commission has created several regulatory exemptions. Where are those exemptions? Like, are they in that Mass General Law?
What paragraph?
Yeah, what paragraph are you talking about?
Number 2.
Gotcha, thanks.
So are those, there is an exemption for school committee members participating in setting school fees. I'm wondering whether we need to, the commission will reference that exemption. Because that pertains to a lot of us who are parents and on school. Item 3, it says, the first sentence, school committee member may not participate in any particular matter in which they, he, or a member, in which they, he.
I'm sorry, I was making fun of the other one.
I said, sorry, that's okay. You want me to read?
No, it's fine.
All right, so number 3, the first sentence, it says, may not participate in any matter in which they, he, or a member, so they, he.
Which
then makes me think further down, it's like he, so I think they should both be they. I don't know if we've gotten to that level of policies yet, but we're trying to make it,
He, she, fine with me.
well, I think we're trying to.
I would leave it at they
They.
or a member.
But I think,
Good with that.
I think that's a typo to begin with, they, but then I think down below, he. I guess the question is we have this policy, but are we actually keeping track of this policy? And making sure people, I know I haven't done it.
Well, we haven't had this policy before.
I think we have, because I remember having this discussion before. Do you remember?
Well-
I think this may have been one of those that just disappeared into thin
Well,
air.
I mean, I know it's a requirement. Maybe we've never had an actual policy.
Yeah, maybe we never actually had a policy,
No,
but
I think
people
we have,
were,
'cause I think we've discussed this. I can almost guarantee we've discussed this before, or maybe it's a policy in a different section or something.
It might have been sports or something, students, yeah. Something
Yeah.
similar. I know that is discussion.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
Recently, not like years and years.
Not
Yeah.
yet.
We've definitely, whether it's a policy of the school committee or not, we've definitely discussed it under the ethics commission and the forms that several of us have had to fill out and around the budgets over the past couple of years, specifically around line items versus the whole budget. So, and I know that Groveland, because I brought this up last May, I guess, or June, whenever that was, that Groveland, when you get resworn in, you have to give them a copy of your
ethics.
of the ethics Massachusetts ethics printout. So because I had one for school, they let me use that because it was within 2 years. But someone else said that their town hadn't asked for that, so that we had discussed it we had discussed this in regards to that and whether or not the school committee or someone should be keeping all of those things as well.
So,
Yeah.
so what I think we should do is, in the second paragraph, instead of saying each year, I think we should say a specific date, like on January 1st. I don't know what makes sense, but I think on like a certain date, probably the first meeting following the election, just so that you know that all new members have gotten it. So maybe on the first meeting following the election,
That's a good
school
idea.
committee members must be given a summary of the conflicts of interest laws. Or I think should be given it by the current chair.
Or, well, we don't have a current chair.
Right,
First
we don't
two
have a
meetings.
chair, yeah.
Or Mary Ann,
By Mary Ann, would that be okay, Mary Ann, if you hand them out?
put a little reminder in your calendar. Hand it out.
Must be given a summary of the
And that we in turn have to give our
Right,
certificate.
that we did our training.
yeah, and again, I think there should be a certain date that we have to turn it in by.
But that's only every other year.
Right, we have to turn it in every 2 years.
Yeah.
So, Mary Ann, do you have an idea of what would make sense for when we should?
Diane Ferrara in our business office sends out this information every year, whatever needs to be done that year when school starts with the deadline.
Okay,
So maybe what I can do is talk to Diane and we can include the school committee in that. And I can work with Diane on it.
that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Because like, I haven't done it for no reason other than I forgot I had to do it. So nobody put me up about it. So.
Okay.
Now, should we table this one to work out the kinks of it, or have we?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to table this one.
Okay.
Second.
Is there any discussion on tabling the vote? Okay, Wayne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marie, Dick,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dina, yes. So we are tabling BCB until next meeting. Where we read. Okay, we are on to policy BDA, school committee organizational meeting.
Move BDA school committee organizational meeting.
Second?
Any discussion? I had a question actually, on the first paragraph. Do we need any verbiage on if like the election is delayed? Like it was this year?
Didn't we talk about that for something else before?
I think so, but I don't think it was related to a policy.
I agree. I think it should say at its first regular meeting following the district's regularly scheduled annual elections. Regularly scheduled annual elections. So like this year, the elections got pushed out. But in fairness for the rotation by the towns, we should still try to do it at the beginning of May.
Right. So
Regularly scheduled.
so following the district's regularly scheduled annual elections, and then do we add a sentence saying in the event that
I don't think you even need that.
we don't need it? Okay,
So can we move this with the amendment?
yes. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, behind you.
Oh, sorry.
Do
Joanna.
we need to reference the regional agreement on this? Because it only says right now we elected chair, vice chair, secretary, but it doesn't talk about the rotation between the towns, and I think that's spelled out in the regional agreement.
It's in the bylaws.
It's in the bylaws. Okay, so we should reference.
But I think it's also in the regional agreement.
Yeah, I thought it was the regional agreement.
I think it's both.
Okay. So it will elect from its membership chair, vice chair, secretary, and assistant treasurer with positions rotating as designated in the regional agreement and its school committee bylaws.
Where do you want that? Sorry.
right after you say, chair, vice chair, secretary, assistant treasurer, with additions indicating according to the, new agreement and school committee bylaws.
So the motion on the floor is to approve BDA with the amended changes of adding the regularly scheduled wording into the annual elections, as well as adding about the bylaws and
Rotation.
yes. Wayne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marie, Dick,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chris.
Yeah.
Dina, yes. Approved BDA. Is that last one? Oh, no. May I please have a motion to approve BEAA adjourned meetings?
So moved.
Wait, what did you make the motion for? Yeah.
For
I think
B-
we want to retire this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I actually circled it and wrote agree, but.
I'm sorry.
No,
That's a good intro.
yes. So I guess I need a motion to retire policy
Yeah,
BE.
motion to retire and delete BEAA adjourned meetings.
Second.
Any
Yeah.
discussion?
Because when,
Emily?
so that's, I just wanted to make sure, because when I read that, I was like, I don't understand this. And then I got to the bottom and I was like, oh, it's not just me. That's why we are getting rid of it if this passes.
Correct.
Thank you.
So, Marianne,
Yes, you're better than the rest of us.
was there a reason that we had this? I'm kind of thinking that was back in the days when like it would get to be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock.
Well, I was going to talk to Peter about all that, and what happened is, we did way back have a consent agenda. We did have a motion at 5 to 10, if members wanted to continue after 10 o'clock. And if they did, it might be, okay, we have A, B, and C left. Let's do A and table B and C. And it was agreed upon by the members that night.
So that would be why you would adjourn the meeting and reopen it, not as a special meeting, but as a continuation.
Oh, like 2 days later or whatever?
Yes, or
Okay.
even if you voted to go past 10 o'clock, you.
Yeah, we can close it. We just- I'll give you all that information.
Okay.
I don't know that means that we need this policy.
But even still, I would say it's not very coherent. No.
Right, yeah, no, it doesn't
So I
even
would
make
say we
sense.
should delete this one and then Jason will be fine and make,
We need a meeting.
Okay, so the vote is to get rid of this policy, and Wayne?
Yep.
Joanna?
Yes.
Emily?
Yep.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yep.
Chris?
Yes.
Dina, yes. All right. Okay, and we're up to policy BEC, executive sessions.
BEC executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Chris, you have a question?
So I had reached out to Marie earlier today about this. So the wording in this policy for the reasons for executive session does not word for word line up with what is in Mass General Law. I'm thinking this was written before there were changes to executive session rules. I think the intent of each of the items is the same, but the wording isn't the same. And I think there's some that go into a more specific of what we can talk about. There's some about more specific things if it's about an individual and their rights to have it in public or like. So I'm wondering whether we need to replace those numbers with what is in general law, or as Marie responded back to me saying, well, maybe we just reference that. I don't know.
So this is how Mass had summarized what was in the Mass General Law is what you see in front of you, but then also there are some school districts like Foxborough, which I had responded to you. They don't even list the items going through 10, they just put a link to the law that you can read the law. So we can do all of those. But then I also just wanted to say that under legal references, the first one that says 39, 22, chapter 23A and 23, well, chapter 39, section 23A and 23B, that was a typo. It should have been deleted in favor of 13A.
So I'm thinking that change might have been when Mass General Law actually changed. Verbiage perhaps from the first type of policy too.
I don't know, because it was updated with this language in 2016 by Mass. The language you see in front of you.
But you know what, when I originally went to look, there was something that the Attorney General's office came up with in 2017. So I bet you that maybe that's when the change. So I just think that this should either be verbatim what is in law or reference to law. I don't have a preference either.
So would we just reference it underneath where it says adopted legal references, cross references, or do you want it referenced within the document?
I personally like Marie's idea of putting a link. You can click on it, then we don't have to be responsible for reading our policy every time.
So if that's the case, then under where it said, under the first 4 words where it says the law with specific provisions, blah, 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 you would delete those 10 and put the link.
Yeah, you could say the committee may enter into executive session only to deliberate the items as detailed in Mass General Law, blah, 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 with the link. I think that would make sense.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
That's the option.
I think that was a good idea. You don't have to worry about keeping your constantly watching the law.
That's a big thing when we did the regional agreement last time. We did a lot of that. Just Mass to get over that way they change it.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay with that amendment?
Does anyone have any questions up there? Is everyone okay with deleting those 10 reasons and just putting the link to the Mass law?
I think it's a good idea to do that because if they change, we don't have to keep updating the policy.
Right. Okay, so the vote is to approve BEC with adding the link to the actual laws and deleting the verbiage that we have there.
I have another.
Oh, wait, Chris?
So then the things that we talk about, that we will review executive session minutes for possible declassification on a quarterly basis. I don't think that's ever happened since I've been on the school committee. So I'm sure there are items that we could declassify, and I'm thinking that we need to somehow come up with a plan to do that. Because executive session minutes, some of them are hiring the superintendent. Once he's hired, or she's hired, those can be declassified.
Right.
All that, as I was told years ago, means is the executive session minutes are voted and recorded, but I was told years ago that they are declassified when the subject is complete, but only if somebody asks for them. And in the past, I think once I had somebody ask me for the minutes.
But I think this makes it sound like
We have
we're
to,
supposed to be looking at those items and bringing them to school committee for that vote on a regular basis, as opposed to on a request basis.
I'm going to need an assistant.
will you say
Are
approved?
you up for it?
Can you say that again, Chris?
Well, so that the first paragraph.
I
that's
understand what-
italicized,
Yeah,
so I think what we're actually, and so there are executive session things that stay classified forever because of the nature of them. So then there's certain things that the public has the right to look at. So Mary Ann's saying that if somebody comes to her and says, can I see those minutes? But I think we're actually supposed to be proactively publishing those executive session
Well,
minutes
you can
once.
declassify them quarterly, but I was told by the attorneys that we had at the time not to post them. Like,
But
don't-
this is saying that it's supposed to come
Well,
to,
then maybe, you know, but this is what you want to do, this is what we do, or you take it out.
so I
I
guess,
thought we had to declassify them so that in the occasion that someone asked Mary Ann in those minutes, it was okay.
It might be a question for, Michelle.
because I just don't want to say that we're going to be doing this
Right.
and then we don't.
I can look into it.
Is this a question for Dorothy Presser?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, this could be a question for Dorothy. Why don't we take,
Move to table.
move to table?
Second.
Roll call vote, Wayne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marie,
Oh, yes.
Dick.
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Dina, yes. Marie, do you want me to reach out to Dorothy?
I can do that.
Are you sure? Okay.
Well, because the second italicized paragraph is what you were talking about, where somebody comes and requests it, we do it. But the first paragraph is saying that we're doing this on a regular basis.
Okay. We're up to our last policy, and that is BEE, Special Procedures for Conducting Hearings.
Move BEE.
Do I have a second?
Second?
No, I think Marie did, but
Oh. I didn't hear.
anything behind you.
I know,
is
I
like-
can't hear. Do I have any questions? I mean, is there any discussion on BEE? Okay, roll call vote, Wayne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily.
Yeah.
Marie, Dick,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chris.
I'm hesitating just because as I read this again, it's saying it's make printed information. Two.
Yep.
Available printed information, but now that we're in the world of, I'm wondering if we should have it be made available printed and electronic. The records for the public hearing,
That makes sense.
because if we're having, I'm thinking we're not having a public hearing in person.
So what, I mean,
I
we
didn't
were
write
in,
this down.
we were in the middle of the vote, so I don't, how do we,
So just, it would be as amended?
as amended, just add
Is
electronic?
that going above
Does that make sense?
legal requirements?
What do you mean?
So you have to have it available in printed form. I mean,
Printed and electronic.
But and electronic.
right, you're looking to put it as and electronic. It's just available, it's not like we have to post no matter what. So I'm just,
So what I'm
Okay,
getting
so if
at
someone
is-
asks for it, we can send it to them electronically. But it
or in
doesn't
the
need to
public
be,
hearing packet.
it doesn't need to be posted,
right, so
correct?
like town meetings and things, those are all posted, physically posted.
Right.
And there's, but they're not all necessarily done electronically, so my question is,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
do we,
Well, but like, so our budget, sometimes in years past, we've handed out things at the physical meeting for the hearing. But here, if we're not having a physical meeting, then we need to make sure that that information is available for anybody at home who might want to be participating. That either could be part of the packet or additional information that goes along with the packet online. Does that make sense?
Yes. Do you not agree?
oh no, I understand, I'm just trying to walk through, it goes back, there's a legal requirement, and we're meeting the legal requirement, but now we're adding on to the legal requirement. I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, Chris, it's, if I'm sitting here and I'm supposed to review a budget, and it's only available physical copy, I don't have access to it, how can I possibly act on it?
Right, so anything that would be provided physically at a meeting, provided electronically.
If asked.
Not even,
But a budget is the whole book. I mean, we don't provide books to people that come into meetings publicly.
but any
summaries or outlines or, I don't know, anything that we would provide, I think needs to be provided in both formats.
Do we know if this is, like Justin said, the law, like it? Is it
And/or help. Printed information and/or electronic.
So I think, Greg, I think the budget's a great example, right? Because that's the biggest document.
right?
I
It's a
just
huge
don't-
book. How would you get it actually, and how would you
We do
even
put
send?
the budget on the website. We put the
Proposed.
narrative, we put the budget, we put the associated
Yeah,
things.
so
It's right on, it's under the budget tab on the website. First
But
thing,
that's the approved budget that goes on, not the proposed budget.
no, I think the proposed budget does go on.
yeah, you can last year's budget on the website right now,
Okay.
on the budget tab.
See, I've never looked for it because I always get a hard copy.
Yeah, well, you guys get a hard copy first, then the next day we put it up online.
Okay.
It's just respectful that you guys see it first. It's
Correct.
gone well before any public hearings though.
But if somebody needed a copy of it prior to us approving it,
It's still online.
Yeah, they can look
Then
at it.
print,
they can print it out.
sure.
So we don't need to provide them with a hard copy.
Nope, they can print it right out.
So we're doing this anyway, so adding electronic is fine. Okay. So is everyone, we've already voted
Yeah,
Pretty
as
much.
amended.
as amended. Should we revote? Wayne? You
On a remote, yes.
Yes. Joanna?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dina? Yes. All right.
Tina?
Yes?
So before we move out of the policy section, can I say something about a policy
Sure?
brought up earlier?
Yes.
So a few meetings ago, we had approved policy MQ hats and hoods. And it is my understanding that there from several parents who have reached out with concerns that this policy may be being adhered to in an extraordinarily rigid way, which is to say that when the windows are open, and I know Dr. B has said, we can crack them as opposed to have them wide open, but whether or not that's what a teacher is choosing to do, that some kids have felt less than warm, i.e. cold in the classroom, and have asked to put on their winter hats and have been told no because of this policy. So I just wanted to bring that up and see what, whether it's something that we look at in terms of policy change, or it's something that is clarified to the building administrators, because some of these people have brought it up and have been sent the verbatim copy of this policy as their response. So that's my policy concern, and I'd like to.
So, Ms. Dwyer, the one place where I've received a copy where the principal was written on it, I just wrote the principal back and I said, this is a clear, common sense situation, right? It's the hats and hoods are done for safety purposes.
Totally.
And when you're in this instance, in elementary school, and you've got 8 kids in front of you, or 9 kids in front of you, and those are your 9 kids, if they want to put a hat on there, I think it's just good common sense. Yes.
I completely agree. I just am wondering whether there is, if you said that to the elementary principals, then.
I only said it to this one principal because it's the only place I knew it came up. But if it's going up across, I'm happy to just communicate with all the principals. That's easy.
Just again, because I totally agree, and that I generally abhor hats in the building, but obviously once you have your kids in your room, you know who they are. It's common sense. I completely agree. I just want to make sure that that's been clarified to everybody who needs to maybe
Hear it.
Who's just worried about following the policies to the letter, and therefore that's what they're focused on. So if you could clarify that, that would be super helpful for a lot of people's peace of mind.
Wayne, you have a
Yeah, I was gonna say a couple of minutes ago, would it be okay that Justin just send a letter out to, a memo out to each principal, that the principal can talk to his staff, and we're all on the same page on this, so Justin, is that something you can notify your administration?
So is common sense going to overrule policy? I guess I totally agree with what Emily's saying, but I just, there might be one person out there that's a real stickler on policy. And those kids don't get to wear hats.
Wayne, we couldn't hear what you were saying.
Would everybody be happy if we vote now to temporarily suspend the policy during these times?
No, I think there's a reason for the policy, especially in the secondary school.
Yeah, the hallway's a dangerous place.
And I think if the kids want to put their hats on when they're sitting in class because they're cold, that's one thing. But to like walk into the have your hat on, your mask, and your glasses, and Emily.
I completely agree. And that's actually what I was going to suggest. If anything was going to change policy wise, that we add that caveat once attendance has been taken in the classroom, students may, don winter caps, should that be necessary. Because we're not talking about baseball caps. We're not talking about like style. This is truly like literally a consideration of personal comfort and warmth in the classroom.
Yep.
Yes.
Is this going to become less of a concern when we get all the air purifiers in?
Hopefully.
It's like we're in an operating room. Do you need the window open when you get an operating room filter in there? You already get the circulation from the univents, and now you're cleaning the air like an operating room. You don't need to keep the windows open.
Right. So it won't be an issue if the windows are closed and the vents or the purifiers are on.
So there's a line in the hat policy that exceptions in regards to headwear may be made by administration for religious or medical reasons. Should we also put like religious, medical, or
Seems medical to
temperature
me.
reasons, which sounds silly, but that's what we're talking about.
Raising it.
Yeah, well.
I mean, I think if just a communication would be fine. Yeah. Anyone else? All right. So now we are going to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of public body and the chair so declares. And we will not be returning to the meeting after this. Roll call vote. Wayne?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion to enter
Move
into?
executive session.
Second.
All right. Now, Wayne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marie, Dick,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Tina, yes. All right.
Thank you, everybody.